Our solar burner here we're going to use right now to pop some popcorn. I use a piece of wood sometimes to find my focal point on here, or if I'm not using wood or I don't have anything else, I like to also use a barbecue grate or some other grate on top of the solar burner here, mainly because it's got a pot receptacle that's more flat, and so the pot rests on top rather than down in like some of the deep dish parabolics. But I will use a old barbecue grate to lay on top of there. It stays stable, it won't move around, and then you can lay on your pots and pans on top of that. But right now we're going to do some popcorn. I'm going to find my focal point right here. If you notice, I'm using a bright, shiny stainless steel cooking pot here. It's an oversized deep with a deep lid as well. I like to do my popcorn in that. It might seem counterintuitive to use a bright, shiny stainless steel pot with a solar cooker. And of course, with your solar ovens, you would always want to use dark colored cookware so they absorb the heat. But this gets so hot that it's almost not necessary to have a dark colored cooking pot or pan on top. This one here that I'm using is a heavy gauge pot, stainless steel. Anything heavy gauge is quite usable on a parabolic cooker. Anything thin gauge you probably wouldn't want to use because it'll scorch right through the bottom. I don't use my enamelware, my graniteware, or speckleware as they call it, on here, except when I'm doing water, heating up water for something like pasta, rice, corn on the cob. And that's because the water won't allow it to scald or scorch right through it. But otherwise I use heavy gauge pots and pans with my parabolic cookers. Just a couple other items on some tips and some ideas on on the use of a parabolic cooker. The earlier in the day or the later in the day, you have to realize that the focal point on a parabolic cooker gets quite spread out, and so it's not as concentrated, not as intense, not as hot. It'll still cook quite well, it's still very hot, but the later in the day and the earlier in the day, your focal points will always be more spread on the bottom of your pan, and with your deep dish parabolics, it'll be spread out more along the sides and the edges of the pan as well as the bottom. When I'm popping popcorn, I like to just keep my pot or pan rotating around a bit. In fact, it's best to have some hot pads or some gloves with you, because the pan's going to get very hot. And as it starts to pop, I just heard the first few kernels pop. I like to move it around a little bit so nothing stays, the oil or the salt or the popcorn stays in one spot so it doesn't burn. But okay, my popcorn's starting to pop already. I'll just move it around in there a little bit so nothing sets and burns in one spot there. And as it gets to popping more quickly, then I'll shake it a little more often to allow the unpopped kernels to filter down to the bottom where they can pop with the heat, and we don't burn the popped kernels that way. I like to keep a little tray next to me right here when I'm working with my parabolic, when I'm up here, you know, scrambling eggs or frying things and stuff like that, where I can keep my cookware, my utensils and things like that next to me. I barely pick it up and move it around a little bit. That way it keeps the focal point continually on the bottom. Okay, we're about done. I thought we were done twice there, but every time I shake it, more seeds settle to the bottom and start popping. I do have a few burnt kernels inside of there as well. You can smell a couple of them. But if I hurry and pour this out into a pot, then I'll be fine. I won't have any smell permeate the popcorn too much.